In episode 3 the next day, Shauna goes off in the woods and just starts writing in her journal when Melissa sneaks up on her. Melissa wants to talk about what happened, but Shauna acts like nothing happened. Instead, the two just awkwardly sit on a log together. It's weird. And then they hear screaming because Marnie is back. At first, Marnie tried to put the moves on Coach because nothing's sexier than a girl with a dislocated kneecap. And Ben made it pretty clear. 1, I'm gay, and 2, I would rather stick an object in my eye slowly than ever touch you, which is really rude because Marnie's attractive. So Marnie, DMs are open. But they then kind of shared stories about grief together, and then all of a sudden they heard that screaming, the screaming from the woods. It was in the cave. And Ben, who at this point thought he was crazy, asked Marnie, "Did you hear that?" And she says, "Yeah, I did." But neither of them could make heads or tails of it. Marnie did make a play to escape using bear spray, but it ended up backfiring and they both got sprayed in the eyes. Ben asked her, "What was your plan exactly?" And Marnie didn't really have one. She was just kind of winging it. But it got to the point where Marnie asked him, "Coach, what is your plan?" And it's at that moment where Ben realizes he doesn't have one. So after a while, he just walked up to her and he cut her free, to which she shoved him down and got back to camp. Now the girls are all pumped to see her back, but Shauna starts picking apart her story. Wait, you dislocated your kneecap falling into a ditch, but how'd you get out? And it doesn't take much prodding for Marnie to say, "Coach Ben found me." All the girls are shocked at this, but Shauna wants revenge. She asks Marnie, "Could you get us back to where you were taken?" And Marnie's like, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure I could." And some of the girls, like Taissa, are like, "What are you going to do? Just drag him out?" And Shauna says, "Yeah, I am. He tried to kill us. He burned down the cabin. I'm going to go get him before he disappears again. If anybody wants to come with me, you're more than welcome." And basically all of the camp goes with Shauna. Everybody except Lottie and Travis. Lottie did tell Akilah, "You really should stay back with us. Try to talk to it." But Akilah wasn't having it. She went with everybody else. By the time they found the entrance to the cave, it was nightfall. Right before they went in, they also heard that primal scream that they've been hearing from the woods, and it startled all of them. It was Natalie who got everybody back together and said, "Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to head in. You guys stand guard. We'll do this thing slowly." But when they got to one part of the cave, it was blocked off by rocks. And Marnie told the group that wasn't like that before. Some of them start thinking that maybe Ben did it, but Akilah says, "No, I don't think he did. I just have a feeling about it." So because of this, they had to find a way around it and break up into groups. That caused Shauna, Van, and Akilah to go together. But the three of them hit a room where all of a sudden their lantern started flickering and then they hallucinated. Van was suddenly back in the cabin, sitting in a rocking chair, staring at the fire until the cabin started going up in flames. At first, she's held back by 2 people, but eventually she's able to free herself. Then Akilah's hallucination was more friendly. She was in the middle of the woods with a bunch of animals and talking to an alpaca about how anything with teeth will bite back. Doesn't matter how harmless it looks. And then the talking alpaca told her, it can be easy or it could be hard, but it's going to get what it wants. And Akilah starts sinking into the soil. As for Shauna, she was floating in the water when suddenly she saw her boy, probably the age of like 4, waving at her. She frantically went to swim to shore to see him, but she started being taken under the water. Before any of them die, drown, whatever, they wake up and they're in a classroom. But the teacher's Lottie. It's Akilah who says, "Am I in your dream or are you in mine?" And then Lottie, who was writing on the board a message that said, "Of all the ways to lose a person, death is the kindest." And she turns to the class and says, "There's only one dream." And then the group hears somebody pushing a cart outside of the hallway, and it's this long, lanky Marilyn Manson-looking figure with no eyes. They then notice that Jackie is in the corner, and she's playing with a slap bracelet. She gives the slap bracelet to Akilah, and Akilah uses it, fine, no problem. Then Akilah gives it to Van, but when Van uses it, it cuts her. And when Shauna uses it, it wraps itself around her neck, cutting into her circulation, and Shauna is slowly dying. It's at that point that all the girls wake up. But they only woke up because Coach Ben saved them. With one leg, he was dragging Van back, saying, "You guys gotta help me." He rips off his mask and explains to the girl that there's poison in the air somewhere. It's some kind of gas, but he's gasping for air. And that's when Natalie and Taissa come up with him on a shotgun, and Natalie says, "Sorry, coach, but don't move." And Ben is caught. Now, as for present day Taissa, she's been beating herself up over what happened with the waiter. She's reading his obituary, and she's just kind of going through it when Van walks in, and Van says, "I got to tell you something." And Taissa says, "Well, I have to tell you something, but Van, you go first." And Van's news is good. Her oncologist told her that she's in quasi-remission. She's going to go for more tests, but this is phenomenal news, and Taissa gives her a big hug. She's thrilled. And then Taissa has to tell her, "Yeah, my news isn't as fun. The waiter who chased us, he's dead. He had a heart attack." Van goes, "Ty, come on." And Ty grabs her and goes, "Come on, listen to me. You're thinking it too, aren't you? First Natalie, then this guy. I mean, it's been a long time, but it could be happening again. The waiter was a sacrifice, and your new prognosis, that's a gift." Van's just shaking her head in disbelief, and Taissa walks over to a candle and says, "Van, just open yourself up to the possibility." And then she lights the candle and starts saying, "We hear the wilderness and it hears us." And she just keeps repeating it over and over. And Van looks very, very spooked. But she must have gotten over it because that night, they're just chilling, having a good time, watching old VHS tapes that Van had of the Pee Wee Herman show. She has a ton of these. But because they're old VHS tapes from like the 80s and 90s, you have old commercials, and one of them comes on. It's for a local ice cream place. But one of the guys getting ice cream is that Marilyn Manson, no eyes looking guy from Shauna, Van, and Akila's Dream. And it's also somebody that Taissa is very familiar with, because as soon as she sees him, she freaks out and says, "That's the guy from my vision." Right away, she looks up the location of this place, and it's been closed for years, but she doesn't care. She goes there. All the while, Van is trying to convince her this is a bad decision, but Taissa doesn't care. She needs answers. She breaks into the place, and there's nothing there until they see it. It's a wolf with a dead rabbit in its mouth. And Taissa says, "What do you want?" And Van says, "I know what it wants." Now, over with Shauna, she's still trying to get information on what exactly Lottie and her daughter were doing the previous night. She's going about it gingerly at breakfast, but Callie doesn't give her any information, and that's when Lottie walks in. Shauna offers to go to lunch with Lottie that day, but Lottie says, "Nah, I'm sorry, I'm too busy," which comes as a big surprise to Shauna. One of the things, though, that Lottie's going to do is go shopping, and Callie ends up catching up to her, knowing full well that her mom would not approve of this. Lottie doesn't mind, but she does ask Callie, "Why are you doing this?" And Callie says, "You were chasing my mom with a knife through the woods? And somehow you're still pals. That's kind of intriguing." Lottie says, "I think we both know it's more than that, but I guess what I'm asking you is who you are." Callie asks her, "Is this something you do with your cult?" But Lottie says, "No, I think you actually have the ability to answer that question." They then get distracted, though, by a couple of items on the rack, items that are way too expensive for Callie to actually buy, to which Lottie encourages her to steal them. Shauna, meanwhile, had gotten a phone call from Misty saying, "I have information." But when they met up, it wasn't a lot of information. The information was basically Misty saying, "Well, your daughter wanted to know what happened in the woods, but I put a stop to it." It was a conversation that could have been a text message. Shauna tries to skip out on this meeting as soon as she finds out that there's nothing of substance to it, saying, "Yeah, I have a bunch of errands to run." But Misty forces a tag along. And one of those errands is going to be getting a gift basket for the business guys that she insulted the previous night. But Misty doesn't really care what it is. She's just going to go along anyway. As they're driving, though, Shauna's brakes give out. Now, luckily, she doesn't hit anything, and she's able to stop in a park. But she immediately blames Misty, saying, "You did this, and I know that it was you who planted that phone." And Misty goes, "What are you talking about? What phone? And why would you say that I did this?" And that's when Shauna just unloads on her, calling her a weirdo who would do something like this because she has a history of doing weird things. To which Misty finally stands up for herself and says, "You know what? You're a horrible friend. And you're not what I deserve." And she goes home. As soon as she gets home, she burns a photograph of her, Taissa, Shauna, and Natalie. She doesn't want to see it. When Shauna gets home, though, Callie and Lottie are just having a ball. They decided that they're going to treat Shauna that night. They're going to make her dinner. And Shauna's open to it until she sees Jackie's necklace around Callie's neck. And she immediately stops in her track and says, "Where'd you get that?" Lottie tells her, I gave it to her. And Shauna asks, how do you even have it? Lottie doesn't answer the question. She just tells Shauna, it feels right. I mean, don't you feel it too? And Shauna just goes off on Lottie, saying, no, I don't feel it. The only thing I feel is that it was a mistake to let you stay here. Get out of my house right now. And she rips the necklace off Callie's neck, and Lottie just takes off her apron and leaves.
Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry. It'll be up in a day or two.